Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bailey Brown, and I will be presenting my presentation based on my Agri13007 assessment um, Part 2 research project, which was a literary review um, involving fertiliser and chemical runoff and the overall degradation of soils due to common farming practices that are outdated in today's technology and new modernised farming systems. So obviously for the introduction we're going to be discussing what is runoff involving chemicals and fertilisers. So what is it? What are the environmental impacts that are caused by it? So obviously what's it affecting? And then what areas are most affected by it? So before we get right in, that was just a little brief introduction on what we'll be covering. Food production around the world has been heavily impacted by a multitude of threats and obstacles that are involved in the overall food production process. A big factor is soil degradation that occurs slowly over time. This is caused by chemical and fertiliser uses, along with poor management systems, allowing for heavy erosion to occur and runoff of harmful chemicals and nitrogen and phosphorus fertilisers, obviously into waterways and into areas that are not desired for the chemicals to be in. The environmental impact of runoff fertilisers and chemicals, along with soil degradation from farming practices, all attribute to the current environmental issues we're seeing today. The literary review that I conducted is aimed at applying and reviewing the reports that I researched, and along with developing my own opinions and points of view, and then contrasting the different literary reviews and literature that I've come across during the study period while I was conducting mine. Now, this is also around the global area as well. It's not just going to be a domestic insight into research that's been done in Australia, it's also going to be done in China, and then I have research that was done over in Canada as well. So it's a global, looking at a small scale, it is a global issue, and obviously touching base on the issues that they've seen over there, how they've gone about preventing them, is obviously highly important when we take it back here to Australia and what we can look at overall preventing the issues that we are seeing here. When discussing the findings, it's also pretty important to take into consideration the cost effectiveness of overhauling entire farming systems, and obviously practice and that sort of stuff. A lot of Australian farmers have been doing stuff what their parents have been doing, what their grandparents have been doing. Some new technology has come in, but most of the farmers are quite conservative in that manner, and obviously trying to push fangle-dangle new research in their face is obviously going to come up a bit abruptly to a lot of them. So it's important to show the environmental impact that they're doing and how the best cost effectiveness at amending these are. So looking into the aim, of the research text is obviously to look in depth at the adverse effects of the chemical and fertiliser runoff on the environment. The literary review was conducted over a multitude of global domestic studies involving the impacts of chemical and fertiliser runoff for fallow country, the events of off-target herbicide and insecticide uses in obviously waterways, and the Great Barrier Reef will be a heavy focal point. And then obviously once we do that, once a conclusive review has been done, it's important to look into obviously the future implementations that can obviously prevent these risks from happening in the future. Preventative measures are obviously going to be a key factor that I'll be looking into. So obviously the significance of the project. Why is it significant? Well, the biggest drama is obviously fertiliser and chemicals have to be applicated during most broadacre country, both growth of crops and pastures, along with obviously weed control, fungal control, and pest insects. They're needed, but we have to obviously take into concept the environmental impact and that sort of stuff that they're going to have. So that's obviously going to be a key focus point for us to take on board. Then we're going to be looking at what key factors are we looking at whilst investigating fertiliser and chemical runoff. So it's obviously going to take us in depth in regards to some chemicals that are obviously going to be more harmful to the environment, especially in runoff events, and along with your fertiliser uses and that sort of stuff. What methods are going to be a better alternative, and then obviously how can information be gathered by us, be gathered and be used to prevent further environmental impact and runoff. So basically that's going to be saying how can we investigate further, how can we implement these strategies, and overall how can we reduce the environmental burden that runoff has and has had for the last 60 plus years at least. So that's definitely going to be an important factor. So moving into the key findings from fertiliser runoff. Fertiliser runoff, the biggest issue there that I'll be focusing on is nitrogen leaching and the nitrogen runoff. Phosphorus has been a big issue on the Great Barrier Reef, especially recently. There were studies conducted and reported on involving levels of phosphorus that were higher than 20% in the last 5 years. There was some correlation between this and Cyclone Yasi, and that came through in 2011, I'm pretty sure, if I check my notes. So the correlations with that are obviously there, but today, we'll definitely be looking at the main issues involving nitrogen leaching and runoff, impacts of nitrogen runoff in the waterways, preventative measures to lessen the risk of runoff, will be touched on as well. So roughly, if you want to take a little step back, more than 50 years, nitrogen or nitrate fertilisers have been used to aid plant production. The use is not limited to crops, as nitrogen products and other fertilisers can be easily implemented into soils and pastures to improve overall production. That was by the David M. and Nasher of 2014. Over the years and seasons, much of the organic matter containing nitrogen in the soils is fed upon, and areas of cultivation and pasture can develop deficiencies, which obviously calls on the need for nitrogen use. And it's not just nitrogen that's going to be taken out here: potassium, boron, phosphorus, zinc, whatever. It's all going to become a deficiency after a time, and obviously fertilisers are going to need to be applicated if you want to maintain yields and sustainability. A major study was conducted by Yu Hu Jian and Bin Yin early in 2009 in regards to runoff, effects of nitrogen fertilisers that have on the rotational rice and wheat crops in Tahui Lakes regions in China. Surprisingly, the article was a little contradictory to the common concept of the heavy leaching. Although minor cases of algae growth were noted in the nearby waterways that were believed to be attributed to the nitrogen leaching over the 3 to 4 year period, much of the terrain was waterlogged paddy country, which did prevent a lot of the leaching. They did believe and speculate that the heavier clay soils would have slowed it down, obviously, in the paddy country as well. There's a lot of contouring and that sort of stuff that's damming the paddy in, and obviously they believe that had an impact on that as well. This was also attributed to the heavy wheat stubble that was also left over, which reduced soil erosion during heavy rain events. The small loss of nitrogen occurred at the start of the growing period. Within the first 3 to 4 weeks of application, this was applicated as a granular form. So obviously it was a solid form that had to break down during obviously the moisture in the soil and the rain. This concluded the annual runoff of nitrogen was between 13.4 and 48 kilos per hectare on average for this area in China, after application rates of about 85 to 122 kilos were used per hectare. This accounted for an average of 8% of the applied nitrogen. The greatest reduction occurred when zero tillage systems, obviously remaining the heavy wheat stubble. So stubble that remained and appropriate contouring bank measures, which is pretty evident in the paddy country of rice and wheat over in China, were also essential in limiting the environmental impact that the nitrogen runoff had on the ecosystem at large. But as I mentioned before, they did find some cases of algal growth that was higher in the trial years that had nitrogen fertilisers applicated, but they believed it was only minor, if that made sense. So this control measure of obviously leaving standing stubble by zero tillage practices is obviously going to be a key impact at reducing the overall soil erosion, which will be highly important at slowing down and preventative measures, along with the infrastructure of contouring and that sort of stuff. If we're moving on now to the key findings in the chemical runoff research, obviously we're going to be looking at how the chemical runoff occurs, the effects of the runoff on the waterways, and the effects of the runoff on the Great Barrier Reef. So this was conducted off the Margaret Sanborn research case in Canada in 2003. This looked at a lot of the adverse effects that the chemicals had on the human population in the small farming communities. Obviously, the tumour and cancer rates significantly higher in areas where runoff events into waterways was high with pesticides, although many of this have been disputed and discussed as if that is the actual cause. But so yeah, many of the broadacre businesses on rotational periods, either via irrigation or dryland